introduction. My character's name is Sarah, and she has been, this is a flashback, she's been dating a man named Bobby, and she has just found out that Bobby is married. Dun, dun, dun. And just so you know, Mommy, there was no married man in my life.
Lisa May?
Okay, so this is when Bobby shows up at her door and has some explaining to do. I slumped on my bed with my head hanging off the side, so the blood rushed to my head. It had been a few hours since I met his wife, Carrie. I felt cold and numb, and as I stared at the ceiling, I could not erase the memory of Bobby's cold gaze as they had walked away. I'd always thought Carrie was a pretty name. I hadn't met a Carrie that I hadn't liked so far. I suppose that this changed things, but how could I hate her? He was the one that lied to me. I remembered Luke's warning when he had first introduced us. I wanted to call Luke and ask for details, but I knew immediately it was the wrong approach to take. I couldn't tell Eve. No, not yet. What would I say? I couldn't even cry because I didn't clearly know what I was feeling. I had thought I was in control. I had thought I held all the cards. After all, I was the one who was leaving the country eventually. He'd always talk about going back to the States abstractly. Returning wasn't inevitable for him as it was for me. I could feel myself irate. My hand reached for it instinctively. He was calling me again. He'd been calling me for the past 2 hours. I didn't know what to say to him. I didn't answer. The thought of being with him made me ache. But it was an ache of longing, like I needed him, craved him. I concentrated on this feeling, wishing it to go away. Then there was a knock at the door. Yeah? I yelled. The anger strong in my voice. I looked in the direction of the door. If it was Eve, she would have walked in by now. There was a second knock. I considered that it might be a new neighbor that had just moved in. I slowly got up, and the blood rushed away from my head, left me feeling lightheaded. I opened the door, and there was Bobby, with flowers and a hopeful expression on his face. I shifted my gaze between his face and the flowers. The blood that had drained from my head rushed back. I felt my temperature rise from deep in my belly. I tried to slam the door in his face, but he put his foot against it and kept it from closing. Sarah, please, let me explain. This is the first time I heard anything like panic in his voice. No! I leaned all my weight against the door, and he was still stronger than me. Baby, please, he pressed, and he had opened the door a little more. No, Bobby, you don't get to, no! Tears started to run hot down my face. The room spun, and I felt nauseous. I stepped back to find my bearings, and he slipped inside. I sank to the floor, trembling. Bobby leveled a pained look at me and crouched to help me up, leaving the flowers on the floor. No, don't touch me. I pleaded as I shrank from his touch. Sarah, please. He knelt down beside me and noticed for the first time a crease in his forehead and lines under his eyes that made him look worn and tired. There seemed to be a genuine sorrow in his eyes. I let him pick me up. I didn't fight back. He carried me to my bed and kissed me and held me while I cried. He whispered, I'm sorry. Over and over again, he kissed my hair, my tear-stained cheeks, and eventually my lips. I felt a throb of longing, and conflict between my thoughts and my emotions made me dizzy. I pulled away, but I was backed up against the wall. He wriggled closer and intertwined his legs with mine. I was young, a different person, he explained, looking away from me. You have kids? I tried to push away from him again, but he held me close. Yes, one. She's 4. Oh my God. I breathed, horrified. The room wouldn't stop spinning. I was so young, she got pregnant. I thought I was being honorable. His voice seemed far away, and I could swear that I heard regret in his voice. I don't love her, Sarah. He stopped speaking. I wanted to keep a cold distance and be able to see through him, but the tears in his eyes evaporated my resolve. He turned his face from me and wiped them away. Then he said it, as if it would make everything okay. I love you, Sarah. Baby, please don't leave me. I love you. He drew me closer. The ache inside of me seemed to burst. It was like all reason had abandoned me. The room spun out of control. I couldn't breathe. He said it again. I love you, Sarah. He kissed me again, and his touch made me melt. I couldn't hold him back. I felt weak and tired. I let my breath out, and I tried to forget my anger, to drown in his caresses. I was crying again, but now it was because I realized I didn't want to be without him. He had lied, and he was a cheater, but I couldn't turn him away. I loved him. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the muffled noises of a TV in a nearby apartment. Bobby playfully ran his fingers up and down my body, and as if nothing had happened. We can do this, Sarah. We can just pretend this never happened. We can keep on having fun. You'll see, baby. He promised me as he slowly undressed me, kissing me. He kept telling me that he loved me as another layer of clothing came off. I lost my words. I pulled on his clothes, wanting to feel the warmth of his body against my skin. He shifted his body until he lay above me. His weight bore down on me, and I opened up to him like so many other times and pulled him closer. We moved together until he pushed himself inside me, and slowly and again. I couldn't bring myself to keep fighting him. I still yearned, was still drawn in and incapable of saying no. I didn't need to think when we were having sex. Nothing else mattered. His touch owned me. Reason floated somewhere just outside my window, and I dared not let it in.